Today's argument, we are talking about power level, we are talking about gear, we are talking about item level of your characters. Why is this? Well, because we have reached an interesting situation in this expansion and in particular in this season with some of the changes put forward by Blizzard over time. And this can be, better visualized by inspecting a series of guilds. For example, right now we are taking a look at some of the guilds that just recently defeated the Galliwick. So we're still talking about guilds in the rank 60 to rank 80 something range of level. Now the first guild in question, you can see one thing about their item level. It goes from 666 being the absolute lowest to 671 being the absolute highest, with the majority, more than half, 2/3 of the guilds being 3 item levels apart. Then we have this other guild over here, Style from the US, and you can see they are between 669 and 666, so 3 item levels apart. Then you have another guild, Divinum from EU, you have 671 a single player, and then 670 to 667, another 3 item level gap. Then you have Solemnity, again from EU. Besides this, presumably re-rolled last minute Prot Paladin. The characters are all within, again, 3 item levels, almost all of them. And then you have this other guild, again between 1 player 671 and then 669 to 666, 3 item levels apart. Myth from Blackhand EU, you have 670 to 666 and 1 player at 665, this is 4 item levels. And then you have Miller Mechanics from the US, this clearly officer loot beneficiary hunter at 673, and then the rest is between 668 and 671, so 3 item levels. And to finish, we have Refined from the US, 668 to 665, 3 item levels again. So we're talking about a series of guilds, pretty much all of the guilds you look at having the average item level of the entire raid be stuck between 3 item levels from the top to the bottom at the beginning of week 7 of the season. So we are now more than 1.5 months into the season. So we have gotten at this point 4 crafted items, we have gotten 6 different items from the vault. If you have been lucky enough to have a usable upgrade from the vault every single time, it's 6 different items. And this has resulted in pretty much all of the characters being in at around the same item level. This has in fact reduced greatly the gap in item level from even the hardest hardcore-est level of players to the run-of-the-mill casual players. Because, right now, for example, if you didn't even touch Mythic raiding and you very simply got your 675, your 4 675 crafted items and your 6 vault items that you can upgrade with Gilded Crests all the way up to 678, practically between those 6 and the 4 crafted items you would have pieces of gear already determined by vault and by crafted items. If you're wearing, for example, a one-handed weapon and an offhand weapon, that makes 16 total items for your total gear. So practically the only advantage someone who, for example, is already 8 out of 8 Mythic and is already farming the entire raid would be to be assigned 1 mid-track piece in one of those 4 remaining slots. Now the biggest target for craft right now for your 4 crafted pieces usually are gonna be the offhand, your second ring, your necklace, and one of the lesser pieces of armor to get your Nerubian embellishment, to power up the Ascension embellishment you put on your offhand. If you have been somewhat unlucky and haven't found a mid-track weapon from the vault or looted it from the raid, then you give up either the necklace or the ring to craft the 675 weapon instead. Then this leaves all of the other 6 possible slots to get from the vault. This is what has caused your gap of item level, even from players competing and completing content much harder than when you're at, whether you are doing +12s and there are characters doing +17s right now, or whether you are wiping on sticks and there are characters already clearing the entire raid in Mythic, you might very well have the same item level, because they have only been given 1 mid-track piece from the raid, and you also got one by simply killing the first 2 bosses in a pug anyways. And then the rest of your gear is either a mid-track gear from the vault, a 675 crafted, or the 658 hero track gear you got from doing Mythic Plus or from doing Heroic, which you have also ultimately upgraded to 665 because you had spare, leftover Gilded Crests, you had nowhere to put them on. The question at this point is whether or not this is good or bad. Whether or not this homogenization of disparity in item level between the top hardest content and the middle of the pack, middling average level content is a good thing or a bad thing. At this point, even the catalyst, and I don't mean the actual in-game tool, but the process by which you can gain something, the catalyst to gain this much gear is the Gilded Crests, which has been over time by Blizzard lowered to be all the way down to a +7. So it's easier than ever to be able to acquire Gilded Crests for you to upgrade your gear in the first place. So even players who have never stepped foot in Mythic still have a very easy and clear way to obtain Gilded Crests to upgrade all of the gear that they earn from Mythic Plus. And even then, because to get that gear, that mid-track gear from Mythic Plus, you need to complete a +10. Completing a +10 gives you 16 Gilded Crests to make it even faster to cap your weekly 90 Gilded Crests. We also have already mentioned you don't even need to be particularly a raider right now to pug yourself the first 2 bosses in Mythic to give you an extra chance from the vault to get a mid-track item from the raid, and also, of course, the fact that you might even loot, you might even win at a roll the items dropping from the first 2 bosses in Mythic. And this has, as mentioned, squished much more the gap in item level between what used to be the top content clearers compared to the rest. Now, if you have been doing your homework every week, if you have been filling your vault every week, gotten your crests and crafted your items, you should be around 668 to 69 item level, without any challenging content completed whatsoever. Just basically the hardest content in here would have been +10s in your vault. So with just having +10s in your vault, you can be 669, which is the same item level of players right now in guilds completing the entirety of the Mythic raid. And the question is this good? Is this okay? Shouldn't there be some kind of an advantage for players completing harder content, even not just in things like achievements, things like mounts or titles, but also, of course, in things like better, stronger gear? Of course, that can come in the forms of same item level but stronger gear. For example, you can't say that, being offered some scuffed trinket that is the 17th best trinket for you in the vault is the equivalent of a player in a guild killing Mythic one-arm bandit and being offered a Mythic House of Cards. Right? That is obviously, despite being the same item level of whatever scuffed trinket you get offered in the vault from Mythic Plus, same item level, but one will be much stronger than the other. One thing that has also helped keeping the item level gap close is the fact that you are limited in the amount of crests you can obtain. So if every couple of weeks for starters you have to spend 60 for crafting, this leaves you only 30 for possible upgrades, and then in the weeks you don't craft items, you still have a bunch that you could use to upgrade gear, but it's little enough that even players doing Mythic content, Mythic raid content, would have to spend all of their crests to push that item they won at 678 item level. This still means that, for example, many players stuck on hero track gear, which is 658, if they are not getting, if they are not looting Mythic raid items, they will have leftover Gilded Crests. Even with the mid-track items they get from the vault that they can still upgrade to 678, they will be left over with some Gilded Crests. And those can be just sent on your hero track gear. The last 2 upgrades of hero track gear bringing the item from 658 to 665 item level. So even if you're not getting enough mid-track pieces to push to 678, you can still upgrade your item level bit by simply upgrading the hero track gear. Yes, it doesn't feel that great because you know that this can be replaced very quickly as soon as you loot a mid-track piece in any of these slots, but it does still help you squish the gap in item level. So we are at a point where the item level gap is very close, and it has been given to us by the, well, obviously still the crafted items plus the items in the vault and the restrictions in the crests and in the upgrades you can get from the crests, especially the items you get from the vault requiring now more quests than before, meaning you can upgrade fewer items than previous with those crests. And partially, I guess we can mention this, partially the difficulty of the raid, especially the early blocks in progression like Styx and Sprocket, which held down many guilds, meaning that you get to kill fewer bosses, meaning you get less loot to distribute, with those bosses being much harder. Those perhaps might have been two valuable reasons also as to why you have less item level gap on average from players clearing the raid on a weekly basis compared to players who do not. This will be the point of contention for today, whether it is okay to have this item level gap being so small, especially if, I guess we can say, the gap in item level in this case would be a hidden gap in power by these players having stronger trinket access because of the more powerful trinkets right now being found in the raid. So despite being only 1 or 2 or 3 item levels ahead of someone who, for example, doesn't even raid, also having access to things like Mythic, House of Cards, Mythic, Moxie Jug, Mythic, Just or Diamond is also what is a hidden extra item level of 2 worth of power. Or if you perhaps think it would have been better to spread the item level gap amongst players, you know, not just 1, 2 or 3, but even 5, 7 or 9 item level difference between players completing this kind of content compared to players who are not. Next to, also, we could say the asterisk, as usual, whenever we talk about this kind of content, the amount of rewards for challenging content, there is always the one that will come out with the point about Mythic Plus, about starting to give better gear rewards in Mythic Plus, like for example, if you complete a plus 14 or a plus 16, you could start getting or pushing out a mid-track item, you know, something like once a week, limited to once a week, or maybe a token, so that when you have 2 tokens you can get an item, so 1 every 2 weeks by pushing 16s in Mythic Plus. Some way to also give you some high item level gear from Mythic Plus as well, not just from the raid, just so if you wanted to spread the item level difference, Mythic Plus players wouldn't be punished by not completing or competing in the raid. But this was today's argument and today's point. How do we feel about this current very narrow and very tight item level gap between even the hardest hardcore content completioners and the more chill laid-back players, which can still reach a very similar item level at this moment. Around 669 is the hard cap for many players, unless they have been given officer privileges and started looting way more mythic raid pieces than normal compared to other players. Besides this, I am going to now leave you to your own thoughts about this. So we're starting our goodbyes, of course, by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, as usual, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, well, our Chronicles of Rain continue. We have had 3 days of rain, followed by 1 day of stop, followed by another continuous day of rain, and today we have a mixed half and half.